So the Las Vegas Raiders lost yesterday to the Kansas City Chiefs, and today I want to talk about that game because I think it's important to understand kind of what's happening with the Raiders offense, as well as some of the replacements that the Raiders have to make. And I think when you guys watch this tape, you guys are going to recognize really quickly there's huge flaws with probably like two or three things that if the Raiders are able to change, they'll be able to have success. And I think it's important to understand because of the fact that Antonio Pierce might actually be here next year, right? Like there's a chance AP is still going to be the Raiders coach going into next season. Obviously, we'll have to change offensive coordinators, and I think that's one of the things you guys are going to recognize right away. What's interesting about this game against the Chiefs, though, is the Raiders actually scored 10 points on the first two drives. Right, so we started the game off pretty well, right? The first drive, we had the football. We went right downfield and scored a touchdown. On the second drive, we went right downfield. And although I was hoping that the Raiders were able to score a second touchdown and, things looked really good at that moment, they weren't able to actually get it done. And I think a part of it is because of the fact that Luke Getsy's offensive scheme is a little limited. I also think some of what Luke Getsy calls doesn't necessarily make sense. It was a 2nd and 9 play that ultimately ended the second drive for the Raiders. And what's interesting about that 2nd and 9 play is the fact that it was an outside zone run towards the right with Zamir White. That too, it was an outside zone towards the weak side. Like the Raiders on this play have 4 guys to the left of the center. You have an extra offensive lineman to the left of the center. You have a tight end to the left of the center. And you run the ball to the weak side, but more than that, you're running it to the weak side when the defense is literally in an under front, right? Or an underlook. To me, that doesn't make any sense, right? Gardner Minshew should have gotten up there. He should have seen the defensive line. And he should have said, this play doesn't make sense to run towards the right. You have a guy shaded to the inside of Powers Johnson. You have a 3 technique on the weak side. It doesn't make sense to run this play to the right. What would essentially make sense is to flip this and run it towards the left. But for some reason, we weren't able to actually do that. And I don't think Gardner Minshew is such a bad quarterback that he can't recognize those little things. I think what's happening with the Raiders offense is Luke Getsy isn't looking for those things, and he's not putting checks into his offense. He's not telling his quarterbacks that, hey, if you see this on the defensive line, we're going to switch or we're going to change the play into this. I think Luke Getsy's offensive approach and kind of how he runs things it's flawed, right? And we know it's flawed, right? Because it didn't work with the Bears. It's not working with the Raiders. The thing is, I was never able to figure it out. And I think I'm starting to figure it out. I think there's just too many small little issues. Guys are taking the wrong steps. Guys aren't lined up properly. Gardner Minshew's unable to check into a play. And, I went back and I watched every single one of Aiden McConnell snaps. He never made a check either, right? So it's not like it's the quarterback, at least in my opinion. Now, it's one thing you run a play, it's not going to work. But then you run it with the running back that's not a good running back when it comes to outside zone, right? So it's just another, you got to focus on the detail a little bit. I would make the argument that there was a cutback lane for the running back. Had he actually been to this back towards the inside, maybe you pick up like 5-6 yards. But that's not Zamir White's strong suit, right? Let's just call it what it is. That's just a bad general concept by the Raiders. So that was our second drive. We ended up settling for a field goal because on like 3rd and 13, right? Keep in mind that play lost like 4 yards. On 3rd and 13, we ended up trying to run a screen. Never worked. That was one of the Raiders' first mistakes, right? It was one of the things that kind of started flipping the momentum away from the Raiders. Now, we had another drive, right? And this is kind of on AP, and this is kind of why I think AP, you got to question him a little bit as well. Our third drive was in the second quarter with 1 minute and 57 seconds left. That's when it essentially started. To me, the Raiders have to be better, right? Like the play calling is one aspect of it, but just the decision making doesn't make sense. If let's say I'm a head coach, right? And I'm out there, I'm a head coach of a high school team. I'm out there, there's 1 minute and 57 seconds left. I make one of two decisions. Either we're going to push the ball deep and we're going to try to score a touchdown on this drive, or we're going to run the football, we're going to run this clock out. You have to make that decision. You can't be like 50-50. You can't be mixed. You got to make the decision and you got to go forward with it. So on the very first play with 1 minute and 57 seconds left before the first half ends, the Raiders run a sweep forward pass to Jacoby Myers essentially. The play gets blown up, right? Chris Jones is on that front side of this play. He blows it up. The play started with 1 minute and 57 seconds left. We ran our next play with 1 minute and 16 seconds left. Now, it's important to understand the clock in this moment because the Raiders have to make a couple of decisions. You pick up no yards on first down. You let the clock run down to 1 minute and 16. And then you try running the football on second down. And you're going to see that the play ultimately does not end up working. Now, what I don't like about this play is, if you're going to call a run play in that type of situation, you want to give your best running back the football. And I think right now, Amir Abdullah is not our best running back. In fact, I'd argue he's like the fourth running back on this roster. He's not a good running back, right? Like a guy that's actually running the football. Because on this second down play, he misses a massive cutback lane. To me, if he hits this to the right side of DJ Galze, this one potentially scores. Maybe not scores, but this one goes 30 yards. And the Raiders are cooking now, right? You have a real drive at this point. But we run the football. We don't pick up anything because Amir Abdullah misses the cutback lane. And the Kansas City Chiefs call a timeout. All right, so a minute, 11 seconds left. The Chiefs call a timeout. There's a minute and 11 seconds left at this point. Now, here's the thing. The Raiders run this little sweep play to Jacoby Myers that doesn't work. They run the football on second down. It doesn't really work. Run the clock out now. That's essentially the decision you just made if you're Antonio Pierce, right? You're running the football essentially twice. I know Jacoby Myers' play is technically a forward pass. It's still a run. On 3rd and 8, 3rd and long, right? 3rd and 8. We decide to throw the football, and it's an incomplete pass, and you essentially stop the clock, and now the Chiefs have essentially a whole timeout, a minute and 10 seconds plus. The decision-making just doesn't make sense, right? Either run the football or push the ball downfield. It's one or the other, but don't mix and match it, right? Like, the worst thing the Raiders could have done is throw the ball on 3rd and 8 when you just ran the play twice before that. And in that, too, you can talk about Gardner Minshew just being a bad quarterback. I think at this point, Minshew is a bad quarterback, but I think the scheme obviously hinders it, and I think he's lost all confidence. To me, 3rd and 8, you get a blitz off of the left side of the formation. Gardner Minshew has to throw this ball hot to Trey Tucker, and you guys will see a little bit later on, he does throw it hot, but Trey Tucker doesn't actually end up looking for it. I'll show you guys that play in here in a second. But to me, if you bring a blitz off the left side and you're Gardner Minshew, and you roll to your right, you essentially run away from the blitz, right? Why are you throwing this pass away, right? And I know this is on Gardner Minshew, but as a coach, if I'm a coach and it's 3rd and 8, and we're gonna essentially throw the ball, I'm telling my quarterback that if no one's open, don't throw the ball away. There's no reason to throw this ball away, and you can see with the tape that there's no one even running a route to that side, right? You have one wide receiver that's running a corner route, and he ends up just trying to come back towards Gardner Minshew, but Minshew throws his ball away on 3rd and 8. That's low awareness on Gardner Minshew, but it's low awareness on the coaching staff. Keep in mind, there was a timeout called right before that play. It's low awareness by the coaching staff not to tell him that, hey, we're going to throw the ball. If it doesn't work, take the sack. Force the Chiefs to burn that final timeout because on the very, right after you get stopped and you punt the football, the Chiefs went right downfield on the Raiders and they kicked the field goal. And the timeout was a big part of it, right? They had one play that ended up picking up like 25 yards. They got to call a timeout. Right, usually when you pick up 25 yards and the guy stays in bounds, you're going to waste another 15 seconds with everybody running downfield. The ball has to get essentially spotted by the referees. You got to actually waste a play and then actually down it or spike it or whatever. Or you can try calling a play and maybe waste another 10 seconds, right? So that timeout right there was a big part of it. And it's like the little things that I feel like the Raiders just are really, really poor at the moment. But to take it a step further, right? So on the very next drive, the Raiders had the football. The Kansas City Chiefs blitzed Gardner Minshew again, and this time they blitz to his right, and he rolls to the left, or he starts looking to the left, right? He kind of starts stepping to the left, and he throws it deep to Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker stops in the middle of his route. Gardner Minshew throws it over the top. To me, I think teams have figured out that with Gardner Minshew in this scheme, you can just kind of blitz, and I feel like this is one of the things I've noticed a lot. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys know I've stated this multiple times, which is teams just blitz us, and we don't have an answer for that. And the Chiefs did this a lot. Now, the Chiefs are the blitz a little bit more heavier than the average in the NFL, but regardless of that, you have to have checks, right? Like, you have to know that, hey, we're about to get a blitz off this edge. We need a quick hitter, right? We need to have something designed where if a blitz comes, a guy should be able to catch the football, and then the guy should be able to make the play, right? Maybe make a man miss. You bring a blitz, you make one man miss. Sometimes that goes the distance. Have the Raiders had any play this year where a guy has went the distance? The only play that comes to mind for me is you had the Brock Bowers play where he mossed the guy. I think it was the Steelers game. And he had a second play, I think it was the first week of the season, where I believe it was Alexander Madison ended up catching it in the backfield, and he ended up making like a guy or two miss, and he took a distance. Other than that, I don't think the Raiders have an explosive play where a guy makes a play. And to me, that's another part of that's another issue with this Raiders offense. We don't have guys that can actually make plays, get the football, and make people miss. Right, but more than that, we have a quarterback, we have a scheme that just doesn't work. Right, you can blitz off of one edge, you can pressure this guy, and he just doesn't know what to do. And then on top of that, you have receivers that don't think they're going to ever get the football, so they kind of stop running. To me, it's just bad all around, however you look at it. And it's not going to get better at this point, right? The Raiders season is over. Right? I hate saying this. I hate doing this. It is 100% over. This scheme is just a really, really poor scheme. And this is why you don't hire coordinators that have failed, right? Coordinators that have not had success, right? Guys like Luke Getsy. Like Luke Getsy is probably the worst coach you could have hired. You could have probably hired, 20 other. You could have probably hired like some random scouts, right? And you would have had more success than Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy's a really, really bad coach. And if you guys don't believe me, just take a look at these next two examples. So the first one we're going to look at is the Raiders ended up having a play in which the Chiefs essentially punted us the football. We had a pretty nice return, and we got a 15 free yards. And essentially, we had the ball at about the 37-yard line. The Raiders had a couple of really, really nice plays. They had some bad plays on this drive, but essentially, they were able to drive all the way down to about the 4-yard line. All right, so you pick up about 32 yards. You get all the way down to the 4-yard line. There were a couple of third down plays, right? There were a couple of nice passes Minshew made. We had, I think, like 1 or 2 good runs. We get down to the 4-yard line. It's first down in goal on the 4-yard line. It makes no sense why you're not able to score inside the 5 because the Raiders had 2 of these back-to-back drives, right, inside the 5, and we scored 3 points combined. That's not acceptable. That's on the offensive coordinator. So the first time, first down on the 4-yard line, we're going to run power to the right. It just doesn't work, right? And what's crazy about this play is there's no creativity in the run game for the Raiders. We run a power run towards the right. There, Munford kind of gets blown up. You get a safety that kind of jumps the gap. Trey Tucker's not able to get to him. And with that, you end up just blowing this play up, and you lose 4 yards on 1st and 4, right? So now you're in a 2nd and 8. And then from there, you're going to run some sort of spacing concept. That play doesn't really work. The quarterback just checks it down to the running back, right? So you pick up nothing on 2nd and 8, and essentially now you're in a 3rd and 8. And it's probably the worst play that I think I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've seen a worse concept than this. If you guys look at the top of the route concept here, it looks, I don't even know what the hell it is. Like Trey Tucker looks like he's going to block and then he releases. It looks like you got some sort of fake to Brock Bowers, like he's going to run some sort of screen, and it looks like Jacoby Myers is going to try to fake block. I'm not sure what the hell that was, but the Kansas City Chiefs defense on the other side, they're laughing at this play, right? Because they're not falling for any of this. All right, this isn't man coverage. No one's playing press coverage. This play was never going to work from the start. There's a safety over the top. This play does not make sense. And the thing is Gardner Minshew has to check out of this play, but I don't think he has the ability to check out of plays. I think when a play gets called, they're going to run it the way it is. I don't think there's checks in a Luke Getsy offense. To me, it's just bad, man, however you look at it. Right? Because when you're running these type of play concepts and they don't work, what's happening is, as a defense, you're seeing that, hey, we just got you guys the football at the 35-yard line. You guys can't score a touchdown. You guys are unable to punch it in from the 4-yard line. And the worst drive of this season was the following drive in which Trayvon Merritt gets an interception, gets us all the way down to the 3-yard line, and the Raiders can't punch it in. And the reason why they can't punch it in is because our coach is a dumb-ass coach. Luke Getsy is such a bad coach. I don't even know how to say it. One of the things that's a fact is zone runs don't score when it's goal line. Zone doesn't work when it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Zone does not work in those situations because what zone's trying to do is you're trying to create cutback opportunities. In short distance situations, guys are blitzing, guys are jumping gaps, right? Guys are trying to make plays in the backfield. Zone's not going to work in those instances. The Raiders ran 3 straight zone concepts. They went to a mid zone on 1st and 3. They picked up 2 yards. They went to another zone run on 2nd and 1. They picked up no yards. Then on 3rd and 1, they ran outside zone, and Andre James got his ass blown up, and we lost like 3.5 yards on that one. It's bad football, right? It's really, really, really bad football. It doesn't make sense to me. It really does not make sense to me. And then you got a 4th down play where you run this basic ass concepts. It looks like it's a sticks concept towards the right. Again, Trey Tucker's running the hitch part of it, right? Where you essentially stop, you look at the quarterback. Doesn't make sense to me. Why is our, 5'10" wide receiver, whatever Trey Tucker is, I don't even know if he's 5'10". Why is he running that element of that route? It does not make sense to me. Now, I'm not sure if this was some sort of design where they're trying to fake it to the right and then throw it up to Brock Bowers, because it does look like Brock Bowers is releasing, and it looks like he's maybe looking to get some sort of jump ball opportunity. Because when Gardner Minshew's pressured, it doesn't make sense for him to try to run through the gap. It doesn't make sense for him to try to step up, unless this is a design play where Gardner Minshew's being told you need to throw the ball to Brock Bowers on this one, right? To me, the Raiders right now are so poorly coached. And it's not just Luke Getsy. Antonio Pierce is just as bad, right? AP is a bad coach because he mismanages games. And, I'm pretty sure the Raiders have someone hired that kind of helps with game management, but it doesn't look good. I don't know how else to say it. The only thing Antonio Pierce is being paid to do, and it's kind of sad, but some people don't recognize this. Antonio Pierce is not our defensive coordinator. He doesn't call the defensive plays. Some people actually have been commenting that over the past couple of weeks. Anytime I criticize Antonio Pierce, people say that Antonio Pierce calls plays. At least our defense is top tier, right? That's because of Antonio Pierce. That's not true. Our defense is good because of Patrick Graham, not because of Antonio Pierce, right? If Antonio Pierce was fired tomorrow, Patrick Graham will continue running the defense and will continue to have success. Antonio Pierce doesn't do anything for the Raiders, in my opinion. He doesn't call the defensive plays. He doesn't call the offensive plays. The guy that does call the offensive plays is really bad. I think the Raiders this year would actually have won, like 5 games up to this point, had we had someone like Cliff Kingsbury. I really do think that, because half these games that we played, our defense has kept us in these games, right? Most of these games, had our offense just done their job, had our offense put up a solid 24 points, right? Like, as in the offense driving downfield, scoring at least 3 touchdowns, at least 1 field goal. In every game, we're able to just be consistent on the offensive side. Add in all of the turnovers and all the extra opportunities the defense gives us. And it's not always turnovers, right? Like, we've seen plays in which a team starts at like the 20-yard line and we get a couple sacks and it's a 3 and out on the defense side. They punt the football and now the offense gets the ball on the plus side of the field. Or maybe it's not the plus side. Maybe it's at like the 40-yard line, right? And you only got to go 60 yards to score a touchdown. That's still a positive thing for an offense to start with the football. Our offense has been really poor. And just to kind of wrap it up, there was one play in which Gardner Minshew fumbled. Some people are going to say, hey, this play right here was the difference in the game. The Raiders are only down by a touchdown. I do agree with that, but I also want you guys to understand, who decided to put Thayer Munford in at wide receiver? What's the point of this play? This play makes 0 sense to me. I don't know why Luke Getsy had this kind of design. I don't know if this was like, hey, we're going to try faking some sort of screen or whatever it was. But the Chiefs ended up just blitzing. They did not respect Thayer Munford being out there. They ended up just bringing an extra guy. And Gardner Minshew did not know what to do, because if that was Trey Tucker, if that was another wide receiver where Thayer Munford was standing, Minshew might have actually thrown the football at that point. But there's nothing you can do when your offensive coordinator puts a tackle, a guy that's like 350 pounds out there. And of course, we fumbled the football on this play, and that kind of shifted the entire game. To me, it's unfortunate because this season is over. I see in no way, no shape or form the Raiders having success. Our coaching staff is a really poor coaching staff, right? You can blame Gardner Minshew if you want, but, I've seen Kyle Shanahan take Jimmy Garoppolo to the Super Bowl. I've seen Jared Goff over the course of multiple seasons go to the Super Bowl. And he's winning 7, 8, 9, 10 games. He's this year leading the NFL with most points scored. And Jared Goff's limited. It's not Jared Goff that's the guy that's just doing that, right? It's not like Jared Goff is a guy like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. Jared Goff just happened to have Sean McVay early on and Ben Johnson most recently, right? I've seen average quarterbacks get elevated by great offensive minds or just a good general team and coaching staff. The Raiders don't have that, and I think that's a big reason why Gardner Minshew's not having success. We even saw Aiden O'Connell come in, and he failed as well, right? I think Aiden O'Connell was even better last year, and we had more success on the offense side last year, and a part of that was also the fact that we protected the football a little bit better. Our team's bad this year, man. I don't know how to say it, and it's not the players, right? I will continue to say that. The players are not the issue. It comes down to coaching, right? I really think that if you look at the Raiders on the offensive side versus even a team like the Chiefs, are the Chiefs that much better than the Raiders? I don't know, right? They their left tackle, right tackle are pretty weak. The Raiders, on the other hand, we have a okay left tackle. We have a pretty good left guard. We have Dylan Parham, Jordan Merritt aren't terrible. DJ Glazes looked pretty good as well. Although he had some losing reps against the Chiefs, but he was still very solid, right? And he's shown us some upside. Then you look at the weapons. Brock Bowers, I think, is a lot better than Travis Kelce at this point, right? Travis Kelce's come downhill, in my opinion, right? And then you even look at the receivers. Like, what do the Chiefs have that the Raiders don't necessarily have, right? So again, to me, I think the Raiders, from a team perspective, even on the defensive side, are not bad. It just happens to be that our coaching staff is really, really poor. We'll see what ends up happening, man. Maybe the Raiders end up figuring it out. Maybe they win 10 straight games to make the playoffs, win the Super Bowl. Probably not going to happen. Maybe we'll draft a quarterback in this upcoming class and we'll get an actual legit coach that can coach that guy. We'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.